The following is a clip from the Authors Who Lead podcast, episode number 185.
So let's talk about this, the science of getting rich. The reason I'm really interested in having this conversation, as well as talking about the topic, is that this is a book that you found, you talk about in your book, you discovered in a thrift shop for like 99 cents. It was published in 1910, so you weren't the original author of this, but it made some sort of impact on you. Let's talk about that moment when you found this book and when you thought it might be a good idea to turn it into a book of your own.
I moved to Oregon from Silicon Valley in about 2014. For anyone who has started or run their own business, you know that there's a big difference between knowing how to do something and knowing how to run a business selling that thing. And I spent years going to every networking meeting I possibly could, hitting the streets, knocking on doors, handing out business cards, and that grind and hustle that usually goes with starting any new business because nobody knows you, nobody knows your work. I had just started landing some bigger clients because I had built up a big enough portfolio. And it was right around that time that my landlord decided she was going to sell the place she was living in and move into the place that my wife and I were renting. She's like, "Hey, sorry, but you have a month to leave." It threw us into a bit of a tailspin. We ended up looking all over the place, but just couldn't find anywhere in the Bay Area that checked all the boxes for us, like cost and location and all the other stuff. And so we ended up kind of out of nowhere moving to Oregon. Once we got to Oregon, basically all of those connections for networking opportunities that I had formed for my business, for local businesses in Silicon Valley, went out the window, except for people that I was able to work with remotely, which wasn't very many because of the kind of people that we were connecting with at the time. I had some cash in the bank, but it wasn't very much. Our business was our only source of income at the time. And I was freaking out. I had no idea how I was going to make ends meet. I didn't know how we were going to pay for rent and pay for food. It was really, really scary. A lot of times, especially back then, when I would deal with uncertainty and things like that, I would usually go to different thrift stores or libraries into the business section, literally going title by title, like there's got to be some answers in here that I'm missing, right? So I was at this thrift store that is now closed in Oregon, and I came across this little green book and it said The Science of Getting Rich. And I was not a great place financially or emotionally or mentally. And I scoffed at it immediately. I'm like, The Science of Getting Rich. This sounds like complete bullshit. This sounds like total clickbait. But I started leafing through it and I realized, oh, when he's talking about the science of getting rich, I realized a lot of what he was talking about was more of the art and science of the creative process and placing a value on something that you make. And there was nothing in it that I saw just through my initial flip through that was like, this is going to happen really fast. Buy this course and you'll be making 7 figures in 3 days. Like there was none of that. It was a lot of just focus on what you can control, be gracious to people around you, focus on gratitude, and focus on creating, not competing. And there was just something about it that I was like, okay, I can jive with this. This is 99 cents. What do I have to lose here? So I bought the book, I started reading through it. And this was at a time when I was challenging a lot of the notions I had about my own business and what it was going to look like. I was having to revisit pricing structures and things of that sort because we moved to a new area where I wasn't able to charge as much because people didn't know who I was. It forced me to really reevaluate a lot of the ways that I was looking at my own worth, my own value as a creator. And I started just doodling notes in the margins. And that version of the book was actually one that wasn't even the original from 1910. It was one that someone else had republished with a very, very small amount of their own commentary. As I read through it, there was a lot of stuff that felt more than your average bit of woo-woo. And I was kind of like, you know what, this is really hard to understand. The language in it's kind of funky. So I started just putting little asterisks next to things I didn't quite get, folding pages over and marking notes in the margins like, oh, okay, where he says this, I think this is what he's saying. For a couple of years, I just kept going back to this book And I realized over time that it really started to change the way that I looked at my own value, my own worth as a creator. And I felt like in many ways, it helped me snap out of self-defeating cycles that entrepreneurs, authors, creators can get into when things don't seem to be going the way that we want them to. I was sticking post-it notes in it, and it was just getting really beat up. And I realized there's a lot of different versions of this book out there. Most of them are just copy and paste jobs from the original because it's in the public domain, similar to Shakespeare and different things like that, where the author has been gone long enough that it's now in the public domain, and anyone who wants to can essentially remix the content. I had published a couple of books prior to this, either for clients or for myself. And because I knew and understood the publishing process, I was like, well, why don't I take a stab at self-publishing a new edition of this? Because I know that a lot of people judge a book by its cover. So I ended up self-publishing it. I gave a lot of copies away, and fast forward to now, this new edition is one that I was approached by a New York publishing house to basically make a new edition of the self-published one. And so I completely revamped the self-published edition for this one. And I'm just really, really excited for how it's turned out.
How's it going, my friend? Ryan here. I wanted to give you an update, and first of all, thank you for watching and all of the support over the last couple of months as The Science of Getting Rich just recently released out in bookstores, and it's available everywhere. You can get it on Amazon, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, and I'm super, super appreciative for those of you who pre-ordered and those of you who cheered me on as I was wrapping up the publication of this book. It was definitely one of the most challenging creative projects that I've ever worked on to date. And for those of you who don't know, I actually moved across the country back east to be closer to family relatively recently, and that's why I've been a bit quiet and am starting to slowly kind of get back in the swing of things. And I really wanted to encourage you, especially with all of the crazy stuff that's been going on over the last couple of years. You're probably wondering, what should I be doing with my time? What should I be creating? What kind of job should I be looking for? What should I be trying to figure out as it pertains to making my ideas happen? If you're in that boat, I understand. That's exactly where I was right around 2007, 2008, whenever the last economic crisis hit our country and the world. I was thrown into a tailspin, kind of like I mentioned in the video here. And I wanted to encourage you, if you are in that boat and you're trying to figure out how do you create systems, how do you create products, how do you create businesses or different things that will create income for you where you don't have to constantly be looking for a paycheck or exchanging your time for money. I wrote this book for you. If you are in any way skeptical, I understand the title of it, The Science of Getting Rich. It does sound a little bit clickbaity, but I promise you, if for whatever reason, if you pick the book up, if you go to scienceofgettingrich.info and you get a copy of the book and you actually read it, and do whatever you can to apply the principles in it. If you're not 100% satisfied with the book, I will refund your money. Just let me know, show me the proof of purchase, and I will refund your money. That said, if you are trying to figure out how to make your ideas happen, again, I wrote this book for you. Do yourself, your future self, and those around you a favor. Pick up a copy. There's a whole bunch of resources for business owners, creators, artists, aspiring entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs. This book is chock full of basically everything that I wish that I had known whenever I first started my business all those years ago. Again, if you haven't picked up a copy, go to scienceofgettingrich.info and pick up your copy today and let me know what you think. I'll talk to you soon.